is up, guys? DT Ninja here to give you guys my RuroKen Hokkaido Arc Chapter 46 discussion. Okay, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed that special intro I put together, and a big shout out to Chris JP20 for his awesome color skins. Now, before we get to the discussion, though, I want to share my latest item. This is Hajime Saito Shinsengumi Edition, the Yamato figure from Japan, the original. This is awesome. I am glad to have this in my collection. I'm going to keep it in the box for now, but it looks really great. I just wanted to share that with you guys, especially since we're going to be talking about Hajime Saito in the latest chapter, in this chapter. So anyways, let's get to the discussion. All right, so today I have 4 questions, and at the end I'm going to share 2 things. I'm going to share a sneak look at chapter 47, which will be the next chapter we're going to look at, and also the current chapter I'm working on, which is chapter 51. So we're going to get a little look at what's happening in the latest chapter. So let's get to it. Number 1, what is the real reason that Juro Abe quit his government job? So obviously, Juro Abe is the government official who is also the decoy to lure out the enemy Kenkaku Heki, Hyobei the Skull, right? And after that, after he was lured out, then the Shinsengumi, Nagakura, Shinpachi, and Hajime Saito, they take on the enemy. Now, we all know what happened. Juro Abe stepped into the fight and fought, Hyobei the Skull by himself. But after the battle, this chapter happens after the battle, he finally decides to call it quits. He says, and I quote, "It's over. I'm never going back. I'm going to leave my office job soon and just grow apples." This quote kind of gives us an idea of his mindset. First, it's over. I'm never going back. This could have a couple of meanings. It's over, meaning I'm not going to be a government official. I'm never going back. That could be why he's leaving his job. That could just be that. But actually, I think he's talking about Aburunakoji, the battlefield. He's never going to go back to the past in Kyoto, because we all know he was at Aburunakoji, but he was on the sidelines and he really didn't participate. So this battle in Sapporo, he was the one thinking it's his Aburunakoji. So here he's saying, I'm done with my past. I'm leaving it behind now. So that's why he's leaving his job. Now, that's what I think in the quote, at least. There could be just a simple meaning in I'm leaving my job, but I think there's some hidden meaning there, especially because he tells his wife, I was at Aburunakoji. So, to really understand Abe, we need to look at the people around him. His enemies, also, well, his enemies, his rivals, the Shinsengumi. We're going to hear from each of them, Hajime Saito and Nagakura Shinpachi, but also there are others that care about him, like Washio Kano and Eiji Mishima, and even the people that died who left a legacy and even words for him to live on in the new era, like Hattori Sensei. So we're going to look at some quotes from these people and kind of get an understanding of, how this came, what actually happened with this and how it all affected Juro Abe. So, like I said, Nagakura, Saito, Eiji, Washio, Hattori Sensei, they all helped him in one way, in their own way. So the first quote comes from Saito. This happens in chapter, I believe, 45, and this was a very powerful quote. He says, "A man who has found a way to live his life other than by the sword, has nothing to gain by going to the site of a deadly battle. And I agree with Saito. Even though we got to see Abe in action, which was awesome, he is right. He has been given another life because his comrade sacrificed himself. He was never meant to be a fighter. So his new life in the Meiji era, he's saying that he has something else. But Saito may be a police officer, but he still lives by the sword. So it's a little different for Saito. But he's trying to get, Abe to understand that. And it all goes back to this quote. And this quote is, "The Goryeo Eiji is finished, so don't throw away your lives here. Instead, carry your will and lives into the new era." Hattori Sensei, chapter 39. This is Aburuna Koji before he dies and sacrifices himself, fighting all of the Shinsengumi at once, including some of the top Shinsengumi, Nagakura, Saito, and obviously Harada was one that struck him from behind. But yeah, this is the quote that he left Abe to live on in the new era. This was one that he misinterpreted, Abe did. And so this one, the next quote, is by Nagakura Shinpachi, and he is the one that really tries to get Abe to understand the importance. What is important in his life right now? He says, and I quote, "Saito and I are fools who will never leave the sword until we die. Abe, you're different. You risk your life to grow the most delicious apples in the world. Make your wife and son happy." So he is saying that cultivation of apples and having his family are the most important thing in his life. Now, obviously, the sword is very important to Nagakura and Saito, so that is the difference between them. But that chapter 43, was very powerful, and it showed how Nagakura really got him to reflect on his life, on these people that have affected him and the words they gave to him, whether it be, at the end before they die, or just trying to get him to realize what's important. It's very interesting. Okay, and then one of his close comrades now. He's a comrade because he lived through all of these failures that Abe was, had to endure. This is Kano Washio Kano. He says, "He's a grim and spiteful man, but many times we ate under the same roof. And he's my longtime comrade, Nagakura-san. I beg of you." And this is where he gets down on his knees and begs him to bring back Judo Abe, the one who actually he lived with, all these years in the Bakamatsu, all the struggles that he had to endure. So he's kind of, asking Nagakura. And then obviously that's why Nagakura stepped in and he tried to make him remember what's important. And then we have Eiji Mishima, who visited Abe's family. And then he got a different perspective of who Abe is. He says, and I quote, "You survive the Bakamatsu, and now you're going to do such a dangerous job without even telling your family." So this really is one where he's basically he's upset that he's left his family in the dark, that he's going to go out on this dangerous mission. And during the battle, Nagakura reveals that how he actually felt about him. And he says he's kind of a difficult person to get along with. However, I do not feel that he was an evil man. That is what Eiji Mishima said. So, and in that moment, that's where kind of Abe is reflecting on all these different things, seeing his family, seeing Hattori Sensei and Nagakura's words really got to him when he basically told him about Mishima, told him about Hattori Sensei. So all of these things are culminating as he's fighting and battling, and he's realizing what's really important. So my conclusion for this, I know this is a longer question, but my conclusion is this. Judo has lived through constant failures. We're talking the Goryo Eiji. Obviously, they died. He lost, he had to leave. And then, of course, he even tried to assassinate Commander Kondo. That failed. Then he went to the Seki Hotai, and obviously that also failed. So there were a lot of failures, and he just endured them all. He sat on the sidelines in a battle, especially Abunakoji, which he, couldn't forget. And he watched his dear comrades die. We're talking about Hattori Sensei, at the hands of Nagakura Saito and Harada, the Shinsengumi, right? The damn Shinsengumi. And obviously, he learned, I believe, through all of these hardships, through all of these people, he learned to let go of the past. And that's why I'm saying it's over, I'm never going back, is actually saying he's letting go of his past. So, and he understands now that he must go to a different type of field, not a battlefield, but a field where he can grow apples, right? That's his love, right? And the love for apples. So that's his calling, to grow apples. And I do believe that. I would say Nagakura, Saito, Washio, Eiji, and Hattori Sensei all helped him. And Judo really saw what was important because of that. That's my feeling. But I wanted to give you guys, kind of an overview of it because, those quotes really did stick with him. And we see that's why that chapter 43, a lot of those are in chapter 43, where he reflects on him, where Nagakura is getting angry at him and, kind of getting him to remind what's important in his life. Okay, number 2, why didn't Ichigawa credit Nagakura or Saito in the defeat of the Kinkaku Heki Hyobei the Skull? Why didn't he credit them? In this chapter, we see him, and it's almost like they're just celebrating. They got this huge parade or something, and Ichigawa is just basically taking all the credit for it. Sapporo Police. He's the head of the Sapporo Police, so of course he's taking all the credit. But why didn't he mention Saito or Nagakura? I understand he hates the Shinsengumi. He brought Judo Abe in to kind of get the Shinsengumi kind of kind of mess with them. But here's the thing, even though Saito is known for being in the Shinsengumi, now he's Goro Fujita. And he mentioned to the police force he's Goro Fujita. So why not just tell them that Goro Fujita and Yoshie Sugimura, the other alias of Nagakura, he changed his name. So why didn't they use those names to credit them for, defeating the enemy? I don't understand. Or even Eiji Mishima, Judo Abe should have been mentioned as well. None of those were mentioned. So I found it interesting because Second Lieutenant Smith, that's the guy, the sword squad, of the fake Yamagata. Well, basically it's Yamagata, but he just didn't want to, show up. Anyway, Nagakura was thanked by this guy, and he got no thanks from Ichigawa. So this guy realizes he's the real deal, but Ichigawa, I don't think he really realizes who's the one that did it. But anyways, I do understand the hatred for the Shinsengumi, but I just don't understand why they didn't use, their real names now. Their older names, I could understand why they didn't want to use them, but they could have said Goro Fujita and Yoshie Sugimura. Number 3, why did Saito and Abe show respect towards each other? These two men hated each other. all the way back from Aber to Koji in the past to the Meiji era, we saw resentment towards one another. We saw it in chapter 37, how, Abe was berating the Shinsengumi and the way they live by Aksok-san, kind of foolish way to live. We saw also how Saito was basically disrespecting Abe by not giving him, respect in his own name, and this is one of the quotes he says. Why don't you ever add san after my name? And I don't need any of your thanks. So this is where Saito says it in chapter 43. I'll say it again. It's not safe out here. We'll take care of the rest. So go home now. So, of course, because of that disrespect, Abe basically ignores that, advice. So, obviously, there's a misunderstanding. They can't understand each other. However, things start to change in this chapter, and there are a few things. The first thing, I think Saito truly learned to respect him throughout the battle. Even though he did go into the side of the battle and he fought, I feel like he got a gauge of his true strength. So he gained some respect in that manner. But also there's another thing. Abe says that he wants to grow apples only and quit his job. So this leads to Saito telling him the importance of apples and that my people, his people in Aizu, they suffered, they had hard times, but apples were something that helped save them. So he's grateful to people like Abe who are going to spend their time cultivating the apples for these people. So that shows that they can kind of understand each other. And that's where the respect comes from. I really do think that's where it actually comes from. Abe also notices the broken and cracked blade of Saito, so I feel like he didn't really have to say anything about how long do you plan to live by Aksok-san. I kind of feel that could be out of concern or just curiosity, but the fact that he brought it up shows that he's kind of, changed, because he's asking him rather than telling him how it's ridiculous. But yeah, that's my feeling on it. Number 4. When did Nagakura figure out who the mole was? And did he suspect his old friend Goro Maeno? Well, isn't a mole on the inside? I don't think so. A door opens. Maeno shows up. So this quote here, isn't a mole on the inside, is Nagakura's kind of conversation with Washio Kano. But you notice the door opens suddenly and Goro Maeno is introduced. So that happened right after they mentioned the mole. That is very curious. But I just wanted to share that. I noticed it. But yeah, out of all the survivors of the Shinsengumi in Hokkaido, you are the most honorable. Chapter 39. That's Nagakura to his old friend Goro Maeno, which is crazy because obviously he's the one behind leaking the intel to the enemy so that, the manslayer can kill a bunch of people, especially the officials. Now, I don't think Nagakura suspected his friend Goro Maeno. Maeno did show up right after Nagakura and Washio were talking about the mole. That is a clue. I do believe that. Maybe that Nagakura remembered that. The report also mentions that the government officials were slaughtered after coming back from Goro Maeno's restaurant and brothel, Karafuto. That is another clue. So they actually were at his restaurant. And then the last one, I think Maena was curious what happened to the enemy, and that must have clued him in. And those things that happened in, previous chapters must have just came to mind to Nagakura, and that's how he figured it out. Okay, guys, that is the chapter. Maybe it was a guilty conscience. But anyways, that's the chapter in my discussion. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let's get to the final part, which is a sneak peek at the next chapter. And next week, we will do the review for chapter 47. Chapter 47 is the final chapter of the Shinsengumi Elegy. We learn a little bit more about Goro Maeno and why he did what he did. We also see this really cool scene of the Shinsengumi in the battle. I believe this is one of the battles, maybe Tobo Fushimi, just in against the Imperialists. And then, of course, it's a losing battle, obviously. And then, of course, we get the fight on the bridge. I'll show you guys. So we're going to take a look at this next time. And, of course, we finally get the enemy revealing himself. I'm not going to share that, but that's just a little quick look at the next chapter. Finally, I'm going to share a little sneak peek at the latest chapter, which is 51. So this is Kenshin and Byakuya face to face again. So they are going to fight. And also, you're going to see this. Sano, and yes, that is Anji. They are back-to-back facing against a Kenkaku Heki. So that's pretty much it, guys. I just wanted to give you guys a little sneak peek at those chapters, and I will see you guys in the next one.